LinkedIn Live is a fantastic opportunity for brands to connect with the 600 million people on LinkedIn. We're about to go live to celebrate the finalists of the 2022 Adobe Experience Maker Awards. A round of applause for that line, to a future with less cancer. Tonight we celebrate the best of the best in digital experiences from around the world.
In this episode, we're breaking down what to look for in an influencer or presenter, even if handing over your brand voice makes you slightly uncomfortable. Have you ever looked at someone with a huge following and thought, that's it, they're the one, they're the key to more reach, more engagement, more leads, it's coming? You're not alone. But it turns out follower counts is often the least important factor because trust doesn't come from reach. It comes from alignment. My guest today is Katie Martell, former CMO and now influencer in the B2B marketing space. Katie has been named a top voice on LinkedIn 3 times and has built an audience of over 100,000 across her social channels. Because of her ability to build engagement, she's partnered with Adobe, Oracle, and MailChimp. Suffice it to say that Katie has a deep understanding of how influencer partnerships work. As she explains, the best presenters and influencers don't just promote a brand, they translate their thinking into human stories that buyers recognize themselves in. This is A Mind for Marketing. I'm Christina Moore, helping businesses connect with more prospects through content.
My name's Katie Martell. I am so honored to be here. I'm a marketer by trade, but my adventures in marketing have really led me very closely to the world of media, specifically social, but in that, a lot of different formats of content. But media, you can't talk about marketing without media. It's the way that marketing has shifted from billboards and print ads to what is now the social internet. And that currency is media. That currency are short videos and written content. And even the ChatGPT era and machines are driven by written content. And the brands that knew this have gotten ahead of this 15 years ago and have been turned into publishing brands. Even in tech, the brands that know that they need to stay ahead of the narratives and control the narratives of their industry have invested in content. And nowadays, that content is short form, it's all video, and audio is still an enormous play. And so we're in this weird world of brands are thinking, I know this is where my audience is. This is where I am as a consumer of this media, listening to podcasts, watching way too much video on the internet. I'm a TikTok addict myself, let's be honest. And now we're wondering, how do we have a voice in this? And a lot of brands are coming into this completely blind, while others have built up entire editorial teams in-house to address what their audiences want, which is content that doesn't feel branded and doesn't feel like an ad.
Right. What would you say is the difference in mindset between a brand that has kind of really managed to put themselves out there, create amazing content, compared to a brand who is still kind of like dipping their toes in the water, perhaps not even getting that much traction for what they do have?
It's hard, right? I mean, I worked with a lot of startups when I was coming up through marketing. That was, an unfortunate way to start my career, or the best way ever to start my career, because you are like David versus Goliaths versus industry leaders that have more money, more budget, more reach. And how do you compete with companies that have 10x your budget, 10x your team? You almost have to compete on the power of your ideas. You have to be saying something in market that is so different than what the established bigger players are saying if you're going to win in that environment. And that's kind of where a lot of brands are. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. My industry du jour has been marketing technology. I've been marketing to other marketers, and that's been the world I've played in, all kinds of different roles in that. But it could be, finance, and it could be automotive. It almost doesn't matter. There's more entrants into these companies' verticals than ever before, which means that the buyer has a ton of options. And you're kind of wondering, well, how do I, in that consideration set of brands that all kind of look like they're doing the same thing? Sure, ours might be better. Theirs might be more this. How do you differentiate? And often now, those brands that get it are the ones that are saying the power of our ideas is the thing that's going to, A, set us apart from companies that look just like us, and B, earn trust. That's the other big part of this that has to be addressed. And everyone knows, if your ideas are out there, if you're transparent in the way that you think, people feel like they get to know you. It's this like parasocial relationship that individual influencers have with their communities, right? It's this idea that like, you know me because I've given a lot to show you who I am and how I see the world and what I believe. The same applies to brands, which is why I think a lot of marketing leaders are scared, is because it requires us as brands to expose the quality of our thinking. And if we're not ready for that, we're going to be exposed as people who are following, people who are behind the trend, not innovators. So I wouldn't recommend that anyone who isn't leading in their industry in terms of thinking about things in a new way, who aren't willing to put that thinking out there boldly, this won't work for you, because you'll just put out a podcast that sounds like, or a content series or anything else that sounds like everyone else's. You've got to be confident in the power of your thinking and in the power of your ideas, and being willing to say, look, the world around me is going to get to know me for who I am. This is now as an individual, this is personal branding advice, but also as a company. You have to be willing to tell the world, here's how we think and why we think it. That's actually a really hard motion for a lot of brands to do well.
It is. And I think, so you mentioned earlier that you've worked with a lot of like tech-based or MarTech companies. And it's quite, I've heard from others in the past that they find it quite difficult to translate that to an audience. What has been your advice in the past in telling stories around technology, subjects that might be complex perhaps? I
always think around tech, no matter what the buzzword of the year is, it's always different, but there's a hype cycle in my industry. And I remember when social media was the big thing that was going to change the world. Well, it has, but we don't talk about it much, as like we did then. This year, obviously, everything's about AI. A couple of years ago, everything was about social, mobile, local. I mean, things have just shifted and the trends continue. But what hasn't changed is that there are people, like human people, like you and I, real people, blood and breathing, not AI holograms, who are at the center of this technology, who are the ones responsible for buying it and using it. And I always find that the best content I've ever made, and that I enjoy making too, with tech brands, is human-centered. Now that's a buzzword, let me dig deep. It's people at the core of it. This is not people talking about the tech. This is people talking about how the technology has affected their lives, changed their lives. And those are stories that we can relate to. For example, I worked with Adobe. Now, Adobe's known for their creative suite, right? Photoshop, Illustrator, that's a huge, huge, huge brand in the creative world. But in tech, Adobe has this incredible enterprise side of the business. It's called Adobe for Business. And they actually are the backbone of a lot of the world's best digital marketing, e-commerce, personalization, email, marketing automation, website analytics. And so how do you create content to talk to people who are in digital, who are working behind the scenes with data and analytics and trying to make all the dots connect between all these enterprise tools? You make content about them. You talk about these individuals. And so what that translates to for Adobe is this great series called the Adobe Experience Maker. And it's a classic kind of vodcast style, video podcast, two people in front of a mic. But what's interesting about it is I get beyond the kind of like case study stuff. Okay, you increased your conversion rate by this. You were X% more effective. That's nice. Talk to me about the change involved, the culture shift that had to happen, your personal mantra when you went into this project, what you learned from the end of it. This is the storyline digging that you have to do to unravel the threads of human stories behind tech. And I find it so interesting because these people are dedicated, they're passionate, they're smart, and they rarely get a chance to get celebrated or sit behind a mic. But guess what? That's exactly who Adobe for Business is trying to reach. More people like them, more extraordinary experience makers. And the content does really well. We post it on social. We do a lot of promo with it, short clips, written articles. So the long tail effect for the brand is really strong because you get a lot of output from a short conversation and very passionate people that then inspire others to say, people like me are using Adobe. People that I want to emulate in my career are using Adobe. I think what I like about that is that it's taken the focus off Adobe, but without it being in a way where that gives, quite frankly, it gives people the ick. Yes, it's not cringeworthy. No one wants to hear a branded conversation about how great the tech is. We want to hear about each other. We are social creatures and we're wired to know and copy each other, especially those that seem successful or aspirational to us. And so why not highlight somebody that you should admire, that you want your customers to admire?
What I love about that Adobe example is that it only works because the spotlight is pointed in the right direction. The brand steps back and it's put the client center stage. And that sounds simple, but it does take some skill. It happens because there's someone like Katie in the room who knows how to guide the conversation without hijacking it. Someone who can draw out the story without making themselves the story. So let's talk about that. What actually makes a great presenter in a branded show?
I'm a big fan of, if you're doing a show like this, you start with your customers. Yes, you want your subject matter experts, of course. You need the people in your company who are experts. But like, they're a dime a dozen now. I'm sorry. And that's why you need a good host. I know what Adobe wants me to say. I've got the messaging. I'm baked into the brand. I've been part of it for years. I know, I'm not an employee of Adobe, but I'm part of the brand. I'm an extension of the brand as the host of this show. And I know what the customers are supposed to say. But my job as the host is to make them actually say, I don't know, what makes them come alive. My job is to follow the trail of what they're talking about so that I can get them to be genuinely excited about what they're sharing.
So a good presenter is a skilled plate spinner. They're holding the brand in one hand, the guest in the other, and I guess they're spinning the audience on their nose. They're actively listening and they're steering the conversation at the same time. But we've all watched interviews where something feels a little off. The energy is low and the guest is uncomfortable. What are the warning signs that a presenter simply isn't right for that kind of role?
You can tell right away when somebody's on air because they want to hear themselves talk, or they're on air because they understand the assignment. And the assignment here is a collaborative effort. This is not about that individual. There's a lot of people in my space, and I'm sure every space, who have built a personal brand that is intent on tearing others down, that critiques, and I'm a big fan of critiquing, but constructively. They might, critique in a way that isn't constructive. So I think a lot of brands have to be careful. Just because someone has a lot of followers or a lot of engagement on their posts, I would look into this person's post. Like I try to be a mix of joy and credibility. I'm a professional. My clients trust me to be a professional on the internet, but I genuinely bring my real point of view out there. Some people, I think, tear others down as a game of like getting more traction on the internet. And I think those people are actually really dangerous for brands to partner with. And I think you don't want people in your space that are tearing others down. And I have to say that because they're all over my feed on LinkedIn. And personally, I don't understand. I'm a joyful, uplifting person. That's what I want to do. I want to lift voices up.
If this conversation has you rethinking who should be fronting your brand, take our assessment, the Content Power Score. It shows you whether your show is set up to build authority or just add to the content slot. You'll see exactly where your approach might be working against you and what to fix first. The link is in the description. This brings me nicely to my next question. It's like, what sort of qualities should brands look for when they're selecting a presenter?
Well, first of all, you need someone who understands your brand. I do think there's something about that mix of subject matter expertise and presenting skills that you do need for to be able to guide the conversation. And that's what a host does. My job is to active listen in a way that lets me. I have this like beautiful mind map. That movie where it's like the newspaper recordings and the red thread over here and there's a line over here. That's what my head is like during an interview, because I'm thinking about how much time is left on our clock. I'm thinking about the messaging I'm supposed to be kind of coaxing out of this person, but I'm also actively listening to what they're saying in a way that needs to sound incredibly genuine for the audience. Most importantly, though, I know I have an ego. No one who has 104,000 followers doesn't have an ego. I've embraced it. I have it. It's contained. It's not about me up there. You know what I'm saying? But in a way, it's my job is to meet the interviewee where they're at. And I find that to be a challenge. You get people with a lot of followers. They build a personal brand based on what they have to say, and they want to do all the talking, and it's their conversation. I should, as a host, not fade into the background, but I should be this conduit between the listener and the guest, and of course, the brand that is putting this all together. My job is triangulating the three of those. I have an opinion and something that's sure. But my job is to really connect the dots between what a brand wants to be known for, what this guest is genuinely passionate about, and what my listeners want to hear. That's a marketing job. That's a strategic communications job that is not just someone who's good on a mic. And I think my years of PR prepared me for this, moment, listening to the executives do media interviews and thinking, don't say this, say that, and having to train people, on that side of it. I did a lot in media training.
I think that there's a lot of CEOs out there, even I would say to some extent CMOs as well, who miss that, right? So they always want to be the presenter of either their YouTube series or their podcast, and I find it really, you have to be incredibly tactful in recommending that that's probably not for the best.
Right. Which is hard. It's not, get that CEO a speaking gig on stage somewhere. Get that CEO onto other podcasts. Give them a platform. This is not that. This is a chance for the brand to be a platform for ideas.
Yeah.
Not the individual. This is for the brand to say that we are able to harness the voices of our industry and push our industry forward. Come to us as a brand to learn new things, not to hear our highest paid person's opinion. This is not the hippo show. We are not the hippo show, okay? Tactful, though, is the right word. I don't envy you having to say to brands, love that, but no.
I'll have
you
a
can
look
tell,
through
right?
your
Like you
social
can
media.
tell. Yes, very that. Like, oh yes, I'll think about that. No. But that's an important part of our job as PR people, as comms people. We have to figure out how to satisfy those stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And I do think giving them another outlet is the key, a different outlet. Yes. It's hard, but you have to push them towards, okay, let's get you a talk over here. Meanwhile, we're going to go build a community around this podcast with other voices.
Hope you don't mind.
Yes, have fun.
What I love to do, what I say is that this is an amazing opportunity for you to work on being at particular events, talking about the podcast in a different space, perhaps even doing panel discussions, all of those sorts of things. And so I try and say, well, you're not ideal for this podcast, but here's where you are ideal. And I think if you kind of like gently take something away and then give them something else. And
yes, put them in a position where they'll be the most successful. I love my founder-led brands. I used to work with startups whose really only asset was a very charismatic founder with a great idea. There is a stage of a business where that is the biggest asset. Before you have a lot of customers you can really showcase, before you have a lot of traction with revenue, you've got a founder or founders with a vision and the storytelling ability. Now, the goal of a business at that stage is to, like I was saying earlier, break through the unknown field of random startups. 98% of startups fail. There's so many startups. There's so many new companies. How do you get to that next level, get funding, get traction, get progress? It starts with a founder with a vision. And I agree with you that they are best utilized when that vision is being spread and evangelized across other avenues. Because LinkedIn is like the place right now for building a personal brand. Obviously, yes, posting. What I'm talking about is very strategic. If you have a company that doesn't have any notoriety, any brand building, it's actually a great way to kind of start building the brand of the founder, the brand, what we're talking about, this individual at a company that kind of represents the brand before there's a real product or customer success like team or set of stories to really lead you. You just have a founder with this great vision. I love LinkedIn for this kind of, they have something called thought leader ads, which is like you can now sponsor posts from individuals. As an influencer, that means that I get sponsored posts. It comes from Katie Martell, but the client is pushing and putting money behind it to get it in front of the right audiences. Very targeted. It's like a boosted post. That should be happening on every startup that has a little bit of money to spend on social media. Your founder should have a page and you should be pushing their individual personal branded content out and put some paid ad behind it because the targeting is phenomenal. And it's a great way of, in addition to your earned media, which is the press that you're doing and all this, add some of that paid media and build their personal brand on a thought leader ad basis. Individual posts that are reaching new audiences based on the quality of your ideas. Now, I have to say, LinkedIn is a client. They're not paying me to say this. I genuinely think this is a great tool. especially for founder-led brands, to push that personal branding and use paid media to actually get it out to the audiences you want, instead of just waiting on the effects of earned media, which can take time. And startups don't have time. Their run rates are like 18 months, and they're like, we're out of cash in 4. So, you know what I mean? They have to be...
That's if they have 18 months.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. They're lucky to have 18, honestly. But yeah, you understand. So I'd love to see more founders experimenting with what LinkedIn thought leader ads are allowing for. And video, heavily prioritizing video on that.
I noticed the videos do so much better than any of my like text-based posts, even the images as well. I'm just like, wow, I know.
Images are still hot. I will say images still work, especially if you have a call to action with a link. If you've got a link you want to drive people to, an offer, a podcast or something, video, don't put anything in that descriptor around the video, because it's really about what's in that frame. And I would honestly keep it under 15 seconds. I know that's controversial, but let's be honest. My attention, the attention spans of somebody scrolling LinkedIn, use your best 15 seconds to hook them into something else. It's the same game we've been all playing for years, but right now LinkedIn is heavily prioritizing video content. It's the fastest growing content on the platform, and the ads you can do around video are like a dream for small teams that want to get in front of. And again, this is if you're targeting other businesses, and it's the world's largest professional network. So if you're not, you got to try. We have to be smart about how we, as content creators, as marketers, use that. Play the game. Don't try to beat the algorithm. Just do what LinkedIn is prioritizing right now and rewarding, which is provide great content, do it consistently, make it watchable, and try new things. Experiment.
Also, the algorithm isn't like these days. I find the algorithm is much better in the fact that it's interest based. So a lot of people are complaining that, oh, my posts don't get seen for like 3 weeks after I've done it. Okay, concentrate less on timeliness now. That's what we need to do. And also, but think more about interest base. And then it doesn't really matter whether somebody sees your video the first day it comes out or 3 weeks after it comes out.
That's what's interesting about the feed now. It's all quote unquote older content. People are saying, oh, this came out 3 weeks ago. Yes, exactly. Yeah. To your point, it's relevance based, so that's the takeaway for any brands here is talk and write and, speak about the things that are keeping your buyers up at night. It's an old marketing adage that's been around for years, but now we apply these same principles to this newer platform. Try to talk about the things that are, yes, in the news. The whole era of newsjacking, that was like a big thing for a while, around 2010. It was like, if there's something in the news and you're the first company in the space to talk about it, you're newsjacking, you're hijacking the news so that you have a different point on it. That hasn't gone away. We still have to have points of view, relevance, timeliness. There's a reason it works. I just think we need to get back to kind of basics sometimes. Talk about the things that your buyers care about, because then the algorithms, and they don't just prioritize relevance. They also prioritize connectivity, meaning the more people you have in common with an individual, the more connections you can build. This is a real reason to invest in something like a podcast, because if you're connected with, and now you're adding all the thought leaders in your space, all the partners in your space, the other names in your industry to your community, that actually feeds the algorithm so that your content generally gets shown to their followers. This is just how the internet works in the social age. It actually is the time to take a few risks, knowing that you can put some guardrails in place to make sure they're effective. Like when I work with a brand as an influencer, I am now being hired as a third party to represent a brand. That's a lot of risk. Salesforce, for example, huge company. I'm the one now representing them. That's a big sense of trust that they put in me. But I go to their events and I get to do little videos about what's going on. And they do trust me because I've been given strong brand messaging, clear guidance on what I can and can't say. I'm encouraged to put my own spin on it because that's what makes it watchable. But at the end of the day, someone else is always signing off on it. These are brand, management that we can, as brand managers, put in place. It's a balance between creative freedom of third-party creators and guests and whatnot, and what you need to protect your brand. So approvals, checks, brand checks, that's what you can use to keep that sense of control while letting, the magic of this platform and this format go. You've got to let other people's personalities shine. That's what draws their audience in. So it's Yeah, it's scary. It's scary as a brand leader, but we know that aligning ourselves with people that have followers is how we kind of borrow their trust for a bit.
And the thing is, in business, and B2B specifically, the influencer or the content creator doesn't want to do any damage to their reputation either. Don't get me wrong, there are some influencers that thrive off a scandal, and there are brands that want that sort of notoriety. But definitely within the B2B creator space, people are a lot more aware of the damage to reputation in those sorts of partnerships. So I think while there's a risk, it's quite a measured risk. Both parties have a vested interest in it being a success.
I think sometimes this comes down to who you're choosing to be a brand partner of yours. And this is where I say go way back in their content, make sure that, again, there's somebody that uplifts other people and doesn't try to tear people down for engagement or for, can I swear on your podcast? People who shitpost are not good brand partners. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to be somebody who, I have a brand. I am very authentic out there. I say a lot of how I actually feel about the marketing industry. I do a lot of work with things like the effect of ads on women and the women's rights in the marketing world. I mean, people know that I bring more than just like corporate hype girl to the table. And that's why I have followers, because I bring my own personal points of view. That can be considered risky.
Nearly everything we've discussed so far is skills-based, things like listening, framing, guiding the conversation in the right direction. But there is another element to this. Some collaborations or partnerships are jarring, a little ill-fitted. And that comes down to alignment. Katie has been very open about the work she does around the impact of advertising on women and representation in marketing. So much so, she's making a documentary about it. So how does that kind of alignment shape the brands she chooses to work with?
I think that's the blend, is a brand has to be okay with what I do, but I, as a creator, maintain a level of professionalism that does not create risk for those brands. That's the balance. That's the payoff. I can't say that for everyone in my space. I can't say every creator and influencer in the marketing world does that. I think some people lose sight of their own reputation and their integrity. I've turned brands down. Because I do not align with their worldview. And I know their founders, the way they do business, they don't align with me from a values perspective, but there's a responsibility to it. You've got to choose people who are actually living up to that and understand that this is an extension of that brand. I am working on a new documentary called Killing Us Softly 5. It is an extension of a documentary series that's been around since the 70s. It's with my idol, Zhane Kilborn. It looks at how advertising and marketing and social media affects all of us, especially women, and how we see ourselves in the world around us.
I have had an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
What a gift to be in your world, in your orbit. If you're listening to this, hire Christina. She knows what she's doing. She'll build you a great show and you will profit handsomely from it. But really, you're going to be shepherding people through this weird new world. And I give you a lot of credit for that and wish you a lot of luck. So it's a bold new world out there, but just pay Christina and she'll help you through it.
Thanks to Katie Martell, generous with her time and her plugs. We had a lot of fun recording this conversation. So here's what I want to leave you with from this episode. If you strip this conversation back, there are a few simple truths. One of them is that in a crowded market, clarity and conviction will set you apart. Another takeaway is that human stories outweigh any features or service update, so use those. Third, the hosts matter more than most brands realize. Presenters are there to connect the dots between the brand, the guest, and the audience. And finally, alignment is a non-negotiable. When you partner with someone, you're borrowing their trust, so make sure their worldview strengthens your brand. Get those right, and you're creating great content. Thank you for listening. And if you want to see where your content might be misaligned, check out the Content Power Score. The link is in the description.